is minimum wage? Minimum wage is the minimum hourly wage an employer can pay an employee for work. Currently, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour.
Pros of minimum wage. Raising minimum wage will get the majority of minimum wage employees off of government assistance. By raising minimum wage workers will have more money to spend, meaning businesses will bring in more income. If we raise minimum wage workers will have more money to spend on necessities. What are your opinions on minimum wage?
I think the minimum wage, if anything, could go up maybe $1. But I also feel like if a company can afford to pay more, they will get better employees. And it's not necessarily the government's job to set that minimum wage or increase it too much. And the capitalist free enterprise system will balance out. And if a company can pay more, they will get better employees and better service. And if a company cannot afford to pay more, they won't. And the government should essentially stay out of it.
Cons of minimum wage. Businesses will have to lay off people to compensate for the extra money they are spending on minimum wage employees. Employers will have to raise the prices of products to balance the money needed to pay their minimum wage workers. If businesses must pay their minimum wage workers more, they cannot afford to hire more workers.
Current minimum wage is $7.25. What are your opinions on it?
I think probably the current minimum wage is a good standard at $7.25. I think if you was to raise the minimum wage to say like $11 or $12, then it's just going to be a trickle-down effect. Everything else would raise. Gas prices would raise. McDonald's wouldn't have a $1 menu; they'd have a $3 menu.
Now in the CNN newsroom, right now, time for your money. A possible tipping point for the economy. 203,000 jobs created last month. But as low-wage workers take to the streets, it's looking more like one America with two economies. I'm Christine Romans. This is your money. The jobless rate is the lowest in 5 years. America on track to create nearly 2.3 million jobs this year. But the quality of those jobs could spark the beginning of a 21st century labor movement. Fast food workers protesting in 100 cities across the country this week. They're calling for a living wage of $15 an hour. And they aren't alone in their call for better pay.
We know that there are airport workers and fast food workers and nurse assistants and retail salespeople who work their tails off and are still living at or barely above poverty.
The president's called for raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour. He also supports a bill in Congress to raise it to $10.10 an hour. But fast food workers say $15 an hour is the living wage that they need. The question, a living wage, who pays? Could raising the minimum wage ultimately hurt the very workers it's meant to help? It's all in the eye of the beholder. First, look through the low-wage workers' eyes for a moment. The minimum wage hasn't risen since 2009. It's $7.25 today. That's, about $15,000 a year if you look at the federal level. Workers say it's simply not enough to live on. But look at it now through the eyes of the fast food CEO, for example. If wages go up, they'd say they'd have to pass on those increased costs to consumers. Goodbye, dollar menu. Hello, $1.25 menu. But the worker sees the big CEO salaries. Burger King CEO, $6.5 million. Young Brand CEO, that's Taco Bell, KFC, Pizza Hut, $11 million. McDonald's CEO, almost $14 million a year. But the CEO, maybe, the business view is a little bit different. Automation. If workers get too expensive, they can be replaced by machines. McDonald's uses order touchscreens in Europe. And did you know that Applebee's is putting a tablet at every single table? Now back to the worker. The worker says they deserve a living wage. This isn't just teenagers flipping burgers. The average age of a fast food worker is 29 years old. More than a quarter of fast food workers are parents raising kids. But the other view, these jobs were never intended to raise a family on. The minimum wage is for unskilled entry-level workers. There are bigger economic forces at play here. It's not the fault of the industry. Bottom line, the minimum wage, a loaded issue, an issue loaded with emotion and different points of view. Here's how one Wendy's worker put it.
I haven't gone to college, but this is one of the reasons why I'm out here today, because I'm trying to fight for my career. I'm trying to fight to go to college and better my life and be more successful.
All right, Diane Swank is the chief economist for Mesero Financial. You know, Diane, on a human level, I want all those people to make $15 an hour. I want all of them to make $50 an hour.
We all want them
right?
to make a lot of money,
of course. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you find yourself in some of these jobs, but On an economic level, what does it fix to raise the wages?
Well, there's two sort of tenuous forces right now. I think, a little bit of an increase, some CEOs have to start considering it because remember, the union movement originally came out of the Great Depression. When people were so miserable, they figured, what do I got to lose to fighting back and unionizing? And what many of these workers, what many of these CEOs risk and their companies risk is unionization. And of course, the unions have been also pushing this a little bit as well. I mean, they're not all the workers that they're out protesting. Some of them are union plants.
And they're getting more effective over the past year and a half or so.
They have been, and that's because, let's face it, their message resonates to someone who's, when you're working full-time and working below the poverty level, that's really tough. On the other side of it, we know when you raise the cost of workers, you also reduce the number of workers you can hire. We also lose it to robotics, and there may even be more losses than we expect.
Yeah, what is that called? Technological unemployment or something, where something else comes up. And I've heard this from people inside some of these industries who say, look, with a little more investment, we can automate a lot of these jobs. Then where do those workers go, Diane?
Exactly. This is the real problem. I mean, you still can't get away from in-home health care. I mean, you need someone actually physically there. You're not going to have a robot do that. So there are places that they go, but again, they don't pay any better. In fact, those are very low-wage jobs and very low-skill jobs, and that still doesn't deal with the real issue. In fact, I would argue automation has hollowed out much of the middle class as well, because many of those, tax preparers, people like that who used to have college degrees, you don't need them anymore because you can use your computer to do it. Now we're moving into the low-wage sector, and that's a sector that had been growing. This month, not as much. Good news is we got some better jobs this month.
203,000 jobs created in the month. The unemployment rate, the best it's been since November 2008. And you're on track really here for 2 million jobs. 2 million jobs this year, that's not bad. In fact, it's the best we've seen since 2005. Also, car sales were good too. If you're confident enough to buy a car, that tells me the economy's turning. I think it's a turning point for people who have a job or newly unemployed. Nothing has changed for people who are long-term unemployed here.
No, it hasn't. And in fact, that's why, that group of people have much lower confidence in the economy. Right. They're feeling left behind, and they are.
That's why you're seeing car sales improve, but maybe at the retailers they're not buying as much stuff because you're seeing that the low-wage, paycheck-to-paycheck worker is holding back. Somebody who has a job savings and is not underwater, they're starting to move forward again. And that's, you don't want to be that one America, two economies forever. That's dangerous.
It's dangerous. And, you look at things, too, like we have almost 32% of young adults, 18 to 34, living with their parents now. They're either unemployed or underemployed. Those kind of things hold back vehicle sales in a more broad-based way. They hold back housing activity in a more broad-based way, along with the overhang of student debt. So you've got a lot of issues, sort of when you start pulling this apart, that you still see. It's like seeing a garden beginning to sprout and then looking under it and seeing all those nasty little worms and stuff underneath. And that's kind of what we're seeing here, is that duality. And it's not a duality that we want in our economy.
And it's also like a baseball player on steroids with a big asterisk on everything, because the Fed has been helping all of this.
Yes.
That's important for next year. Will the Fed taper?
I think the Fed is going to taper, but the Fed wants to make clear that it's doing a switch out, that it's, okay, we're tapering, but we're still stimulating. We're going to keep these zero rates for much longer, I think till 2016. And the idea is they want to leave that punch bowl out there till more people are dancing on the floor, and they wouldn't even mind if a couple people got a little tipsy on the side, because they want to catch up. They want to do for the economy what's not being able to be done yet, and that is take some of those marginalized workers and bring them back into the party.
All right, Diane Swonk, thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, now here's a tip about